3 years ago, I was in a bar in Galway, and this guy asked me where I was from, and I said, "Oh, I'm from Tipperary," and he said, "Where are you really from?" I was adopted, and I kind of said, "Is that okay for you? Will that do you?" He said, "It won't actually, no. You're all the same coming over here and whatever else." And I'm like, "Well, I've been here since I'm 10 months old."
Yeah.
My story is I'm 33 years of age. I was born in Romania in 1989 alongside my twin brother Fergal, and in 1990 we were adopted by Irish parents, by a Tipperary woman and a Limerick man. And how that came to be was my adopted parents, were watching Pat Kenny live, which was on a Saturday night. It was a rival show to the Late Late on the Friday back then. And there had been a couple who'd come on who had just adopted kids from Romania. They were telling their story. So prior to that, you had a situation in Romania where there was a dictator, Nicholas Ceausescu, who had been executed in December of 1989. And after that, then they started opening up the adoption. And when my parents watched the TV program, the Pat Kenny Live, there was a phone number on the end of the program, and it said to ring this number if you're interested in possibly adopting from Romania.
Okay.
So my parents rang the phone number, they got in contact, and they got the ball rolling, so to speak. And from there, then my mum went out to Romania, and she was asked, "Would you be interested in adopting twin boys?" And she was introduced to us, and she, as she says her story, she fell in love with us straight away, and the both of us were brought back to Ireland in September of 1990. What's your story, Tony?
I'm a 28-year-old university student from Limerick, but I was originally born in Romania as well. My adoptive parents went over to Romania in 1996 when I was just shy of 2 years old, and adopted me as well. And I think it was a similar enough situation to yourself, whereby they saw the kind of adoption crisis in the 90s that was kind of all over the TVs with RTE and everything else, and in the papers. My adoptive mother always wanted kind of 4 or 5 kids. I asked her a few years back, I was like, you know, if you had 2 biological kids already, why did you decide to adopt another 2? Because my younger sister is adopted as well. She just said, I suppose, from seeing the plight of the orphanages over there, she'd want to kind of do something about it. She went over with my aunt, and they got me first, and then subsequently then my younger sister as well. Do you know, there's so many similarities between a lot of the other people that are adopted as well, like the Romanian community in Ireland.
Well, I would imagine it's in the hundreds, because I know myself from my own area in County Tipperary, I know at least 6 or 7, maybe 8 people that are adopted from Romania, and it all happened in the early 90s around that time, because you couldn't adopt before that because it was under like the communist regime of Nicholas Ceausescu. I was told from a very young age that I was adopted. Like when I'd say it was maybe 5 or 6, even maybe 5 or 6. I'd say. When were you told, if you don't mind asking?
I think it was off the bat. Like I suppose as soon as I started learning English, my adoptive parents were very transparent about it. When we were younger, you know, in our kitchen they had a Romanian map on the wall. Okay. So when we'd have visitors, they'd show people. Well, I suppose people who first met us would be like, "Oh, what's the map for?" And my parents would tell them the story. That's where Corolla, my sister, is from. There was a bit of a shyness about it at first in terms of people outside or close family and kind of our cousins and stuff. Or at least my birth mother, she was originally from Bucharest, the capital in Romania. Yeah. And she had me at a very young age. Her family then were very religious, you know, they were Orthodox, very devout Orthodox Christians, especially her father. Having a kid out of wedlock was kind of frowned upon, and you were kind of excommunicated from your family. She had me at a very young age. She had me at 17.
Oh, right, very young,
Yeah, so she was kind of banished from the family. Yeah. And obviously, you know, being so young and then trying to raise a child in such a poor country at the time was very difficult. So I think at the time as well, due to the law, she didn't actually have a choice to put me up for adoption. So
Yeah, so it's great that you know your story. You
Yeah.
know. We only found out fully our story a few years ago because my brother and I actually made contact with our biological family.
Right.
And we learned that we have, our mother is still alive. However, unfortunately, our biological father died in 2005.
Okay.
We have an older brother called Marion, an older sister called Nicoletta, and another older sister called Aura. My adopted mother brought myself to meet my biological parents, and they were actually living in England at the time,
Right.
believe it or not, because they had immigrated over there in the mid-noughties to work over there in factories. And we were talking to my biological mother and my brothers and sisters, and they had said that I, out of the twins, was very, very sick as a baby, and that they didn't think I'd survive. So the doctors said the best thing to do was to put myself and my twin brother to keep us in hospital for a bit longer. Unfortunately, at the time, my biological father had just had a stroke. So my mother, being Roma, they were very poor.
Right.
They were all illiterate as well.
Okay.
And so the doctors, I think, kind of persuaded them almost that it would be best to put us up for adoption because I would get better medical treatment in a Western country than in an Eastern country in Europe. What are your feelings towards your birth country?
In the past 2-3 years, I've expressed a lot of interest in wanting to find out more, mainly because due to the COVID pandemic, I reached out to my birth mother for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Just, I suppose, because in Romania, the health system isn't as strong, well accepted amongst the Romanian population, and even vaccines themselves. I thought about relatives that I would have over there, especially older ones. I started doing a lot of more research about the country and especially the capital where I'm from. I suppose you can read this and you can watch that, but you really have to immerse yourself in the environment, and I think that's the best way to become accustomed with it.
Yeah, and I have actually been back to Romania. We went back there in 2006 before we made contact with our biological family because we wanted to see the country first.
Yeah.
It was difficult and it was emotional in certain ways. You know, it was just 16 years from the execution of Ceausescu.
Yeah.
So it was still kind of a developing country at the time, I would say. What I found the most difficult part about Romania, which I think probably just still exists today, is that there's a big gap between rich and poor. What makes you Irish?
That's not something I thought about until recently, I suppose, the last 3 or 4 years. Going to college became a big part of that because when I'd be out on nights out or socialising or talking amongst new people, especially, I suppose, Irish people, they'd ask me, am I from Spain or France or, other countries? And then the minute I'd open my mouth with the kind of strong Limerick accent, they'd be like, oh, you're Irish. That's the biggest element that makes me feel Irish.
Irish people have a sense of humour that is kind of lovable rogue kind of thing, isn't it? Like, and for me, it's having that kind of also that sense of community, sense of belonging. I know myself when I lived in the UK for a period of time. When I moved over there, I was got to know some people within the Irish community, and they were really, really good to me over there. You know, there was a sense of togetherness, as I say, and community, and looking out for one another. And said, like, Irish people love telling stories and love talking, and I love talking, so it suits me down to the ground. How do you react when someone asks about your adoption story?
When I was in primary school, my adoptive mother, she made a photo album of the story of my adoptive parents going over to Romania to the orphanage, and did a cool thing with it where she kind of illustrated it and kind of wrote down a little kind of description for each day. In primary school, I celebrated it, but the minute I got to secondary school, it was complete denial. I didn't say anything about it.
All right.
I think it was adolescence and
not wanting to be different, like.
I think when I was a teenager, especially coming into secondary school and just being around girls as well, was a big thing for me, where I wanted to fit in with the lads, and there was a kind of certain stereotype of the typical Irish lad that girls would be interested in. once I got to college, then it was something that I celebrated again.
I've always been comfortable with it.
Right.
I've never felt ashamed of it. I'm not saying that you did, but I've never. I was also always very open with people. The one thing that I find difficult is when people first meet me, like yourself, guess, oh, where are you from or where are you really from, and then it's kind of like, oh, are you Pakistani, Indian,
right.
or Bangladeshi? And then sometimes what I find is that me answering the question saying that I'm from Tipperary isn't kind of good enough for them.
Okay.
And that they want that my answer is somehow false or insincere. Like,
oh yeah,
3 years ago I was in a bar in Galway and this guy asked me where I was from and I said, oh, I'm from Tipperary, and he said, where are you really from? And I said, well, 27 St. Michael's Avenue, Tipperary town. He said, no, but where are you from, like? And I said, look, mate, I'm from Tipperary. What do you want me to do?
right.
You don't look Irish.
Yeah.
And then I said, I was adopted. And I kind of said, is that okay for you? Will that do you? He said, it won't actually, no. And I said, look, I'm just out for a night out with my friends.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, you're all the same coming over here and whatever else. And I'm like, well, I've been here since I'm 10 months old.
Yeah.
But look, that's few. You still get it, but it's few and far between,
Yeah. How do you feel when people refer to your biological parents as your real parents?
I hate the word when it's used in that context,
Right.
obviously. I find every time someone uses that word, it really cuts me emotionally.
Right.
My mum and dad who adopted me, they brought me to jiu-jitsu, classes when I was younger. They brought me to Irish dancing. They brought me to Gaelic football and hurling training on a dirty Tuesday night in November with the rain pouring down.
Yeah.
That's real.
Right.
There's nothing more real than that.
Yeah, no, I think that's like the core reality for most adopted people. It's assumed that like you were stolen or you were taken. Do you know?
That's
and
a wrongness was done to you. Like.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I suppose some people are genuine in their intentions. They ask it in such a way that they want to gauge kind of your reaction. Like, was it a positive experience for you, or is it something that you've kind of overcome, I suppose?
I think what I'd like people to take away from this interview is that, particularly if you're an adoptee yourself, just to, as I said earlier on in the interviews, to fall in love with your story and to embrace it. The good, the bad, the ugly, every bit of it. And luckily for me, it's been overridingly, as I said, positive. When you come to accept your adoption story a bit more, you come to love yourself more.
No matter what age you are, as Connie was saying, there's no need to feel ashamed, or on the flip side of it as well, there's no need to have to feel like you have to explain your story. Asking someone where they're from is harmless, and many people mean good intent by it. But if you don't want to say it right there and then, or if you're waiting down the line, maybe you've decided, I don't want to tell people until I'm in college, or I don't want to tell people until I've met my birth family, then that's the advice I'd give anyway.